Good morning. Welcome to this Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Mary McLaren and I am chairing the meeting today. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones and laptops are on silent. Additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov.app. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you are intending to do so, please inform the committee clerk. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is in Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium, that is the ground floor area and walkways. If you are in the atrium at the time of the alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts. Do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. Can I welcome the following people to our meeting this morning in attendance? Councillor John Ward, who is the Cabinet Member for Finance, Assets and Investments. Arthur Javonia, who is our Chief Executive. And Melissa Evans, Director for Corporate Resources and Section 151 Officer. And helping us with the meeting is Alicia Norman, who is our lead officer for Overview and Scrutiny. Can I move to the agenda, please? Apologies for absence and substitutions.
No apologies received, Chair.
To receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Questions by the public.
None received.
Questions by councillors.
None received, Chair. Thank you.
We now proceed to item 6 on the agenda, which is BOS/23/01, the Draft General Fund 24 to 25 assumptions. I would like to invite Councillor John Ward, the Cabinet Member, to introduce the report to the committee. Thank you, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You have in front of you the report which provides the General Fund budget assumptions for the 2024-25 financial year. We are currently, on the basis of these assumptions, forecasting a deficit of £1.5 million for the budget for that year. And this compares with the current situation for the present financial year, where we're at the end of Q1 forecasting an overspend of £681,000 as opposed to a budget prediction of £22,000 surplus. Although we haven't yet confirmed the Q2 numbers at Cabinet, it's likely to show a worsening from that £681,000. There are a number of factors that have gone into these assumptions, and you'll see there are one or two really significant items here. Firstly, of course, the pay award increments and the pay review. This is a combination of both the 2023-24 pay award, but also the 2024-25 pay award assumptions of 4%. The other big contributing factor is the reduction in planning income. That is significant. We are forecasting for the current year, and this has had an impact on our current year forecasts, of a reduction in planning fee income of over £400,000. And this is likely to continue into the next year, which is why we're showing this in Table 1. We also have an increase in short-term borrowing rates. The rate now is 5.5%. So all in all, that provides an assumed increase in net cost of service for 2024 to 25 of just over 2 million, 2.2 million. Set against that, there are some savings. The principal one is, and this is yet to be confirmed, but should be later this week at Suffolk Public Sector Leaders, that SPSL will not be top slicing from the pooled business rates, and that this year, as we did a couple of years ago during COVID, the individual boroughs and districts will retain their portion of that pooled business rate. So that will enable another £700,000 to come back to us, which will reduce the overall forecast deficit from that 2.2 million down to the 1.5 million you'll see at the bottom of the table. There are still pressures on future years, and the medium-term picture is currently showing a deficit position of 2.5 million for 25-26 and 3 million for 26-27. As a result of the situation in the forecast currently, that's likely to increase, both of those numbers increase quite substantially. So you'll see we've got a lot of work to do in order to balance our budget, but we will get there, we have to get there. But at the moment we have these budget assumptions which we must address. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Questions from committee members? Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Ward, on table 1, particularly my question centres particularly around the pay award and the assumption of 4%. Bearing in mind the inflation rates and the overall impact of let's call job movement generally between local authorities, etc. Question 1 is our assumption sufficient and accurate? B, have we factorised into that the cost of job movement, i.e. if we lose people based upon, say, a slightly inadequate pay award, and then we end up having to try and find new people, i.e. the cost of recruitment, embedding people into the council, training, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Wyman. Certainly in terms of the increments that have been agreed, this is based on primarily on the nationally negotiated increments, plus also our own internal pay review. We know the numbers from those, and from both of those, the numbers are accurate. As to the impact of any movement of staff and loss of staff and rehiring, that's really not something. It's difficult to forecast the impact of that. I would say, wouldn't you, Melissa?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Yes. I mean, it's not in these numbers.
No, it's not. The next item down, you'll see we've got a vacancy management factor of 5%. So we've got an allowance in there for staff turnover, if you like. So when somebody leaves, if it takes 2 or 3 months, or somebody's on 3 months' notice of the job they're coming to, then predominantly there is a bit of a saving there because we don't fill that post and we try to cover it within existing staff. Obviously, when somebody joins, there is a negotiation. We tend to, or our policy is to appoint at the bottom of the grade when we appoint someone new, but obviously that is a discussion to be had when somebody is recruited to a post. So there's nothing built in there apart from the staff turnover numbers.
Yes.
My sort of point really was there's like a sweet spot on the pay award. And the pay award needs to contribute. I'm not asking the question now, really, am I? So I apologise. Sir. But the pay award, it needs to be at the right point, doesn't it? You know, if we don't spend sufficient here, it's going to cost us way more over here, and the impact of that for the council as a whole can be quite, you know, there's impact to it, and it's important to make sure that the pay award is as good as it possibly can be. At the same time, we don't lose people and incur cost in relation to having to recruit.
We'll let the Chief Executive come back on this, but firstly, I think from the pay review that we've conducted, we have addressed all of the anomalies that were in the system up until now, and we've come up with a new pay structure which is fit for purpose and for going forward. But you've got to remember that people leave and move around from job to job for a number of reasons. and we can't cope with every eventuality there. So there's going to be a general churn anyway. But Arthur, if you want to pick up on that.
Yes, thank you. I don't know whether it's of any assistance or not. So the pay review that we've done this year is something we don't want to have to do very frequently, but that's allowed us to at least make sure that we are on a level playing field with other local authorities, and particularly other shared local authorities. So hopefully that will assist with exactly what you're talking about. The pay award element, which is the annual inflationary amount, is outside of our gift. So that's set nationally through negotiations between the employers and employees, or with unions. And so in that respect, that isn't one we can directly control. I'd like to be able to, so then we could put some certainty into our budget and we'd know what number we're working with, whereas in reality we have to put a best guess into the budget and then see what plays out through those negotiations. But at least, I suppose, the one advantage of it being set nationally means that you haven't got that competition further exacerbated where one local authority pulls away from another, as it were.
Thank you.
Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, John, Melissa, Arthur. Looking at, unless I'm misunderstanding, looking at your table 1, there doesn't seem to be any assumptions made for gas, electric and fuel cost rises. Now, based on current situation, they're likely to rise, I would have thought. I just wondered is that not being factored in, or?
Councillor James, there is a line for fuel costs.
But it doesn't, the assumptions boxes are blank.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, there's just a numerical impact. There's nothing here.
Yeah, no, it
in
wouldn't
the
be a blanket. Yeah, it's not. It's different for each contract. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
There are a number of separate
Usage.
contracts in there and usage profiles, so there's no single number that.
All right, so we can't factor in fuel, those sort of cost rises.
Well, all we've put in is an impact of another £38,000 in the final column there.
Right. Okay then.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have 2 questions, if I may, please. The first one is, why have we assumed for a 0 council tax increase? And we know that we will be increasing a percentage. Why have we assumed 0 instead of assuming a central percentage point?
What we have here, a list of all the assumptions that are going to effectively act as the pressures on the budget for next year. At the moment, we haven't made any decision over how we're going to address those pressures, either through council tax or any other changes to fees and charges. The administration has not yet agreed as to what it's going to do on council tax, so consequently, we can't put in a number just yet. What? Oh, and yes, and also the government hasn't, because we haven't had the settlement for this year, we don't yet know whether the 2.99% limit is going to be retained or whether the limit will be changed.
But doesn't it make our figures look worse when you haven't put in, an assumed, like a middle rate sort of thing, or even an assumed lower possible percentage? It just seems that we're by putting in 0, and we know that we won't have a 0 increase, that it makes our figures look far worse than they actually need to be, because we know we'll be allowed to charge something, a percentage, and it seems to be allowing us to make our outcomes seem far worse than it need to be, really. And that's quite a big, or a reasonably big difference to our final figure. It just seems an odd accounting method, really, but please explain.
Really, what we've got here is the size of the challenge facing us. that £1.5 million deficit has to be zero by the time the budget goes to council, because we can't run a deficit budget. So what you're talking about are the ways we're going to bring that down from 1.5 million deficit to zero. Council tax will be one of them. There are, if you'll see on page 7, under the heading Band D increase, there's an indicative number here, two indicative numbers, one for 2.99% and 1.5 for £5 increase, which show you the kind of increases that those two council tax options will provide, and you can take those numbers off the £1.5 million to get an idea of the impact of council tax on reducing that deficit.
May I ask my second question, please? Thank you. Yeah, my second question is, it appears that planning income is one of our areas where we have a bigger deficit than we had hoped. Has it to improve that forecast? Has it been considered to use external consultants as short-term measure instead of current staff?
That planning fee income represents a reduction due to the far smaller workload, due to far fewer applications coming in. So I'm not quite sure of what you're trying to...
So at the moment, because there are fewer applications coming in, where it would be a sad thing to do, of course, and we have some excellent officers, but has it been considered to possibly lose some of those officers to decrease costs? And if a short-term need comes in, to look at external consultants to cover any temporary increase in need if we do have to lose some staff.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Councillor Grandon. You're straying into political decisions over solutions to the problem, and these are decisions that we're not in a position to finalise yet. But obviously, everything has to go into the mix when trying to address the problem we have facing us.
Sorry, yes, I understand. Thank you very much.
Councillor Riley.
Ah, there we are. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And Councillor Ward, good morning to you. I'll go back to Councillor Grandon's question. Second question is, we're not getting the planning fees that we expect. And the reason being that developers are not coming forward with plans for housing, businesses, and so on. So the question is, what are we doing to make Babergh more attractive to developers and more attractive for businesses coming forward? I mean, you know, we're showing here that we've got continuing deficits, 921,000, 2.5 million, 3 million. We are just planning to overspend our income for 3 years onwards. So we need to have strategic action in place to bring down these deficits and show how we are living according to our means, which is what we're not doing. You know? And so the question comes back again, if planning fees are a key element, and there are other key elements here, what are we doing to address this problem? Or so address the situation?
A lot of the issue is not so much things that we are not doing. It's the current economic climate. Developers are postponing their plans and are not coming forward with planning applications. Our new local plan, which is going to council tomorrow for adoption, sets out our development policies for the next 15 or so years, and I would contend that that does demonstrate that Babergh is a place where development of the right sort is very welcome, and that will the policies in that plan will determine the way that development will take place over the next 15 years or so, both for residential and commercial development.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I don't quite understand these brackets. We show, sorry, page 7, bottom of page 7, business rates. We show figures in brackets as income, which I'm trying to get my head around. Can you take us through this? Suffolk leaders to consider proposal not to top slice from the pool business rates, and that this apparently gives us income of 700,000?
Yes, I did touch on that in my introduction. So you will see here in the second right column the various business rate components, the income we're getting or we're forecasting getting in the current budget, and we're making an assumption that it's going to be pretty much the same going forward. You'll see there's a pooling benefit item there of £457,000. What happens is all of the Suffolk authorities together benefit from pooling their business rates. Some of that goes back to the individual authorities, and some of that is top sliced for Suffolk public sector leaders to spend on projects that benefit the county as a whole. And we get that, Suffolk public sector leaders gets that every year. What we're proposing for 24 to 25 is that top slicing that goes to Suffolk public sector leaders does not, and is instead retained by the individual districts and boroughs and county. So that's why we get another, on top of the current rollover forecast for various business rates income, we're adding on another £700,000, because that's no longer, assuming that gets approved by Suffolk public sector leaders on Friday, that will no longer go to SPSL, it will be retained by Babergh.
Right. So that's addressing our deficit.
It's a one-off to address the particular pressures we've got this year. As indeed, as I said, we did the same thing 2 or 3 years ago in 2021 in COVID, when we had significant pressures there. The decision was made not to top slice, and so we benefited at that point, and we'll be doing so again next year.
Thank you.
Have you any more questions?
No more questions?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. On the topic of staffing, if we were to call for voluntary redundancies, how would that square with Mid-Suffolk, who are in a different financial position with our shared officers?
Thank you. Yes, you hit the nail on the head. It causes an immediate question because staff are employed on one contract but effectively work for both authorities. So they may happen to be on one council contract or not, but the costs are shared. So if we make an individual redundant, then obviously you have half the saving, roughly speaking, for Babergh as a result of that post being lost. But equally, Mid-Suffolk saved that post as well. Another way of looking at it, if Mid-Suffolk didn't want to lose that post, you could transfer the whole of that post to become a Mid-Suffolk employee and no longer providing shared work with Babergh. That's possible. Starts to cause some headaches from a managerial perspective, as you can imagine. If you get a situation where some staff work for one but not the other, and lots of staff work for both, it starts to get more complicated, but not impossible. I think my main concern around voluntary redundancy would be the inconsistent way in which that brings people forward, because what that's not doing is matching your political priorities and resourcing accordingly. It's an individual saying, I'd like to go, well actually I might really need to keep you, and really I can afford, or make a difficult decision, to lose somebody else in a different team. So I would rather not go down the voluntary redundancy route, but you're right, as the leaders set out, we're going to have to make some difficult decisions in order to balance the books.
Questions? The privilege of the chair. First of all, when we're looking at the vacancy management factor, I have not seen any costs for temporary staff or interim directors. Is that information available?
It's not something we would tend to put in a paper like this, and what tends to happen with temporary staff costs is that's offset against the vacant post, if you like, so it's already in the establishment, so it'll be just set against that cost, if you like, that budget.
Is it possible, Melissa, to see that?
Yes.
Just over a period of a year?
Yeah, we can do that.
I would welcome that, because I don't remember seeing that. Thank you very much. When we go on to supplies and the gas and electric and the fuel, what has been the benefit, and is it demonstrated in this paper, by reducing the overall space that we're using? We lost lime, didn't we? And we've gone into gold only. What financial benefits have been to us from that, and has that impacted on the sort of supply system?
We certainly had a reduction in the rent we had to pay, and also the service costs we had to pay for the space we occupy here at Endeavour House. These numbers relate to our other premises, don't they? Depots and things.
There is will be in there as well.
Is it? Yeah. So, in terms of the rental income savings, where
that
those?
will be in there. That'll be in the premises.
That's
It'll
in the
be
premises
costs.
costs.
It won't.
Yeah.
It's not actually in there, but it is in the budget. It sits on the premises. Yeah.
So it's not here on this particular table, no.
To go back to that, Councillor Ward, it would be interesting to see what benefit we have gained by, I mean, that was the reason we
Yes, I do have the numbers somewhere, but not immediately to hand, unless...
No.
Arthur, do you have that?
Not the numbers, and I have a figure in my head. I'm not going to quote it in case it's wrong. But certainly, if you take away the fuel element for a moment, or the energy cost element for a moment, half the rent, half the business rates, half the facilities management costs, because we are occupying half the amount of space. So there's a clear saving there. In terms of the actual fuel energy costs, we'll have to go and have a look.
It does raise the question about what was the benefit, the financial benefit, considering this is, an important review. Thank you. Back to the shared legal service, that is something that I think when I was chairman last time we reviewed. Again, I'm looking for some costs on the shared legal. How is it? I know it's 3 councils. How is it broken down into the costs of the shared legal service?
So I can't remember what the exact percentage split is, but it's based on kind of the work that West Suffolk do for Babergh and Mid Suffolk. So it's based on the churn, if you like, of caseload that goes through. So it's worked out on that split.
Because we did review it at this committee, it might be worth sort of looking at those figures, if that's possible. Thank you, Melissa. The last question, sorry. The planning income, which of course we're all concerned about. I raised this the other day, actually, in a different meeting about planning income. But what happens if those plans have been approved by the planning committee, the developer then pulls out of that or just doesn't do? How does that impact the income, say, from the new homes bonus and the SIL and all of that? Because certainly I was somewhere yesterday talking about developers. I mean, a lot of them are facing really financial struggles. If the already approved plans are not completed, what's the impact of that?
Well, obviously, it'll have an impact on our housing supply in the years going forward, and it will have an impact on SIL, because SIL's not payable until work commences, and then there's usually a schedule of SIL payments throughout the development. There are obviously a number of applications that have been approved so far, which have not been started yet. We have no way of determining when a developer is going to commence an application, and we just have to assume at some point that they will. If not, if the application lapses, then there'd have to be a further application in the future.
I mean, that's a big consequence, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Isn't
Obviously, in terms of SIL, yes. New homes bonus, less so, because that is tailing off, and we're not sure if we're going to get any next year and years going forward at all. But the biggest impact, of course, will be on our council tax income, because we won't have the growth in the tax base. And, of course, the worst impact is we won't be building the homes that people need, and it'll be contributing to house price inflation, housing availability shortage, and all of the consequences arising from those. Just going back, I do have the Endeavour House costs in front of me if you're interested in. So the lime and gold footplates were costing us £164,000 a year in rent, and £200,000 service charge. The second floor rent was just under £10,000 per annum rent, and the service charge was just over £5,000 per annum. Gold footplate, the rent is £82,000 per annum, so that's a half of the lime and gold, but also we're no longer occupying the second floor space, and the service charge is £107,500 per annum. So significant. We're talking about 50%, more than 50%, given that we've given up the second floor, reduction in both rent and service charge.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Any more questions, sorry? Councillor Wyman, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. To both Councillor Riley's point on development generally and the loss of revenue, and also to the Chair's point in relation to our planning position and applications that are being made. It's a sort of semi-political question and a semi-sort of process question, which is, do you think the pace of change between JLP 1 and the addition of JLP Part 2 will create a hiatus of unknowing between people who want to make development decisions over the next 6 months or a year?
I wouldn't have thought so. The JLP Part 1 will clearly set out our development management policies, and it's those that the applications will be assessed against. Part 2, in terms of spatial distribution, site allocations, that sort of thing, developers and other applicants can always come forward with sites, whether they are currently recognised sites or not, and those applications will be assessed against the development control policies we've got. Obviously, we want to speed up and expedite JLP Part 2 as quickly as possible, so we have some certainty over that, over where the development will take place. But I don't think that the time it's going to take to adopt that is going to have any impact on how often applications come forward from developers. That they will bring applications forward to suit their business plans.
So politically and from an executive perspective, we're quite content then that the pace of change and the pace of the settlement of Part 2 won't be an impediment to our planning processes and fees.
I don't think it will be an impediment, no. But that's not to say that I don't want it completed as quickly as possible, because I do want certainty over particularly site allocations and how individual communities are going to develop in the forthcoming years, because we owe that to our residents for that certainty, so that they know where development will be expected to take place. But you also got to remember, we've got a substantial number of neighbourhood plans that have been approved so far, and they do, for the most part, allocate sites within their own individual communities. So we do have some knowledge from the neighbourhood plans.
Good answer. Thank you, Chair.
Arthur.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to add one thing. The slowdown in terms of planning fee income isn't a Babergh issue. It's a national issue. And so effectively, where we are with our joint local plan, as the leaders outlined, shouldn't have a bearing significantly so much as the impact of the economy. That's the thing that's have a direct drag, if you like, in terms of planning applications, and particularly major applications coming forward. So as we see the economy recover, hopefully we'll also see our planning fee income recover in line with that as well.
Councillor Riley.
Hoping for a planning income of raising fees by 25%. Are you aware, question, how does our proposed new fee compare with those, not of our competitors, but of our neighbours in mid-Suffolk, Suffolk Coastal, whatever? I mean, how does this increase make us more attractive, equally attractive, or less attractive?
The 25% for minor developments, 35% for major developments was a government announcement very recently, so that applies across the country.
So sorry, say it again for me, the 25% is?
25% for minor applications, 35% for majors. These
Okay. But, okay, fair enough. All right. So the answer is we don't know. Okay, fair enough.
Chairman, no, the answer is not we don't know. The answer is we don't set planning fees. No. Government set planning fees, and government have just increased planning fees as a result, which is great news. Shame they didn't do it about 7 or 8 years ago, but nonetheless, they've finally increased planning fees. That will help mitigate in part, but clearly not substantially, given the reduction in the planning applications.
And just further to that straying into the political arena, yet again, the government has set that nationally, but the district councils network and district and borough councils have been lobbying for a long time for us to have that ability to set those fees locally so that we can reflect local market conditions. Unfortunately, the government has not allowed us to do that.
Councillor Jameson.
Thanks. Contracts, are these the only contracts we have, can they be broken down further? And also, like the contracts relating to our housing, does that come out of the HRA, or is that included in this as well?
No, that's not all of our contracts, though. The ones we've picked out there are just the most significant ones. We do publish our contract register on the website, so you can see there a list of all the contracts we've had, but most of them are fairly insignificant in terms of increases, so that wouldn't have a significant show there. Sorry, your other question was? Oh, the HRA, sorry, yes, that will sit in the HRA. Anything to do with building services will be contracts in the HRA.
So on the website it actually breaks down the costs of each of the contracts?
Yes, it does, yes. So it has each contract, the length of the contract in there as well.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions, members? Have we come to the end of the question? Who would like to start the debate? Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. I think you've made a compelling argument for some serious scrutiny of how we look at our revenue streams, and we are effectively, whether you like it or whether you don't, a quasi-government business, and we generate income through various streams. So my general point is that we do need to look really closely at how we manage our income, because the trajectory towards a serious deficit is really on the cards. And we need to look really, really closely at how we manage our finances and where we generate income from. Chair.
Were you actually going to propose that as a recommendation?
I'm
Or
happy to do that,
consider
Chair.
as a recommendation? Okay, thank you. More comments, members? Councillor.
Just that we're obviously not alone in this situation, that this is affecting councils nationally, and I'm sure we're keeping abreast of what other councils are doing to try and fend off this situation, and we should keep a close eye on what other councils are doing and the national situation.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Riley, did you have anything to contribute? Councillor Grandin? Councillor Jameson? Well, I would like to just say about the report, which was very helpful. I've got to say, Melissa, to be honest, that what we had the other day helped with that presentation that we had the other day was really helpful to explain all of that. But we do have some serious decisions to make as a council, and I think we need to be all aware of that. Alicia, are we ready to go to the recommendations?
Yes, Chair. So in the report itself, there's recommendation 2.1, which we'll keep, which reads that the draft budget assumptions as set out in the report for the 2024-25 General Fund budget be noted. And then the other recommendation that we have is the one that was proposed from Councillor Wyman, which I have written down here, and feel free to change it before we vote, that the Director for Corporate Resources further assesses how the Council manages its income to further decrease the General Fund deficit.
Now, for the first...
Chairman, sorry, my point was, I just really think we need to look very, very closely over and above what we are already doing. We've got compelling information that tells us we need to make good that deficit, and we need to look at every strand of potential income that we can generate throughout the organisation.
Councillor Wyman, you're making that as a proposal. Can I have a seconder, please, for Councillor Wyman?
Thank you, Chair. So, members, those are the two recommendations that I just read out, the one that's in the report and the one proposed by Councillor Wyman. Does anyone need me to read them out again, or are we... Okay, that's fine. So, Councillor Wyman, you're happy to propose both the recommendation of the report and your own recommendation, that's fine. Cool. One second. Okay, members, that vote is now in progress on ModGov. Yep, that's fine. 4, thank you. Okay. If Thank you, members. Chair, that is 6 votes for, so that is unanimous.
Completes agenda item 6. We will now go to the item 7, but can I thank Councillor Ward and Melissa and Arthur for presenting and helping us with those decisions. Thank you very much. We go on to item 7 of the agenda, BOS 23/02, forthcoming decisions list. Do members have any comments on the forthcoming decisions list? We don't have to vote on that, do we? No. Any comments, members? None. Thank you. The forthcoming decisions list is for noting only. Item 8, BOS/23/03 Babergh Overview and Scrutiny Work Plan. Do members have any comments? No? Yeah.
I'll come back to that in a minute. Madam Chairman, I'm very pleased to see that in January we will now receive an update on the progress regarding Corks Lane, because I was previously given to understand that the ONS was not an appropriate body, and I'm pleased to see that this has now been acknowledged that we are an appropriate body to look at these things. And hey, that's great, we'll roll it, and I look forward to the information and the scrutiny that we can give to this project. We did ask for information on where we were with officers working from home and so on, and what productivity was. This was carried forward, and I was now given to believe that, and I see he's left now, which is a shame, quote, the Chief Executive has advised that he has access to these numbers and is reported to all members at the annual all-member briefings. And he will look to set up a briefing soon when this data will be made available to you. Madam Chairman, I'd like to underline the fact that when we ask these questions, when I ask these questions, I ask the questions on behalf of this committee, who in turn respond, because we are here, on behalf of our residents. So I take it very dimly when the officers slide their way out of this and tell us that we are not an appropriate body. And I'd like to underline the fact that we ask these questions so we can find out not only what the council is doing, but so we can be happy with what they are doing. We expect to receive good news. This is not a bear trap that we set to cause embarrassment. You know, we expect good news. We expect to know the council is on top of its problems, and that's why we ask the questions, so we get these answers. Otherwise, you not giving us answers lets us assume the worst, and that's what happens here. So I would like, Madam Chairman, to put this back again and put it in for January, that we would like to know where we are with working from home. As we all know, you come in here on a Monday or Friday, it's like boarding the Mary Celeste. The place is empty compared to others. And you can tell how bad it is because the Friday fish and chip day has been moved to Thursday. So, Madam Chairman, I'd like to bring this back now to this committee, and I'd like it to be scheduled for January.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. I've noted all your comments, and as you know, I'm always eager to respond to comments, and we'll come back with some proactive response to you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brandon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we do go along that route of examining the staff working from home and otherwise, might it be useful to have a comparison of pre-COVID or a zero, zero date and today's date, on productivity, some form of measurement is what I'm seeking, so that we're not just looking at the number of staff who are working from home, but how it affects productivity, how it affects communications. If a resident calls up a particular department, does it affect communications regarding contacting members of staff who are working from home, and so on. So we're not just looking at straight numbers of who's doing this and who's doing that, but whether it is having any effect on the way the council operates and its interactions with residents and so on.
Thank you, Councillor Grandin. I think that's a very useful comment to make, an observation. Alicia, I'm just cogitating on this at the moment. Do we need, with this particular subject, do we need to do a task and finish group? I'm looking to you for advice, actually.
It really depends what the committee would like. My personal suggestion as an officer would be that we bring an information bulletin or a report on this subject to committee first, so we can have a look at the situation and ask the questions that you want to ask. And then if you see that there's an issue that you would like to work on further, then we can see about putting together a working group or a task and finish group.
Because I think I'm listening to the committee members, certainly two of them are interested in pursuing it to a greater depth and detail, and I think we need to respond to the committee's concern, actually. Alicia's suggestion, is that acceptable to you? Because it would...
I'm sorry, Alicia, could you just explain again how you see that you would, your suggestion, could you explain your suggestion again, please? Sorry.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Thank
So the item that Councillor Riley has proposed on this topic, we will bring back in January, or if it doesn't fit, maybe February or so, definitely at the next committee or two. We'll review the topic in that format. If you come across issues within that topic that you want to explore further and you think that maybe committee is not the best place for it, we can put together a task and finish group or a working group that would be comprised of members from this committee. And then we would look to scope that at a future meeting of the task and finish group if it was to be put together, if that makes sense.
Councillor Riley.
I'm very concerned that we actually continue to kick this problem down the road into the long grass. We understand that the chief executive has access to these numbers, so we could actually ask for them to be delivered within the week because he has access to them and he knows what they are. So asking for them in January is not a great hardship. You know, let's have the figures, let's have whatever spin it needs to be put on them. Let's show how much better we're doing than pre-COVID or whatever, pre-Brexit, whatever benchmark they wish to go and use. But let's have some figures, let's see where we're going, and let's see what we're doing. The chief executive has these figures. We're not asking for a great deal of research. January, please. I don't care if it goes to other working parties. I've had enough of working parties that I can't control, we can't control. We've asked for this information once, and now we're asking for it twice.
Councillor Riley, let's first, okay?
That's fine. The only reason I say that it might not be January is that we would have to discuss whether Mid-Suffolk want to look at this item as well. At the moment, the January committees look like they are going to be completely separate. So we would have to organise a joint meeting to do it jointly, which might not work. Whereas we have a joint meeting already in the diary in February. So that is the only reason that I suggest maybe February, but I can appreciate you wanting to get this information in front of a committee as soon as possible. So I will have to take away this conversation. Obviously, the Babergh committee are happy with it. I will have to talk to Councillor Caston and Councillor Scarf, Chair and Vice Chair of MID, to see if they want to do this item as well. And then we would, if so, we would organise a joint meeting, and I will have to see how that works logistically. If they don't, it will be a Babergh only item, and it will come to January, hopefully. No worries.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. I wonder whether it might be possible to discuss the kind of areas that we would like the information on now, so that we're not going for, you know, so that we can, once you have found out from Mid-Suffolk whether they would also like to explore this topic, whether we can just go straight to the paper rather than having to go in steps. Would that be possible to discuss the kind of things that we would wish to explore now, rather, because that's 2 months away.
Yeah,
just
of
to
course.
get to that first step. Whereas, you know,
So it's essentially scoping what you would like to see in that paper. Is that what you're trying to imply? Not now. At the Mid-Suffolk only Scrutiny Committee this afternoon, I will pose the question of adding this to the Mid-Suffolk work plans to that committee. And then once we have a agreed idea of whether it will be a Babergh only item or a joint, I will definitely look to discuss, at the very least with the chairs and vice chairs, what that paper would include. But as I know it is a keen issue for this committee as a whole, I would perhaps explore the idea of how we could scope that as a committee ahead of that report coming. My suggestion is right now that hopefully we're going to be doing training in a couple of weeks for the call-in, and we can extend that session, if appropriate, to discuss this item as a committee as well, if that makes sense. Cool, thank you.
Is that what you were wanting to hear, Councillor Brandon?
yes, I'm very happy with that. Thank you.
I think, I mean, I understand Councillor Riley's concern. I've heard that, and that's been supported by Catherine Grandin. But if we want to get effective results, we have got to do it properly. And yes, I understand you want to do it straight away. I'm not sure that's wise. Let us look at the information. Let us see if Mid-Suffolk are happy to work with us on the same concerns, and then we proceed with a proper procedure that satisfies everybody. Is that okay with you, Councillor Riley? Yeah, thank you. Work plan. Sorry.
No problem, Chairman. This may not be this may be an inappropriate suggestion or comment really, but on the meeting on the 18th of March 2024, when we're looking at the local planning enforcement task and finish group recommendations, would it be possible to extend or ask that the scope of that, or is it too late to ask for it, to include the impact and embedding of JLP Part 1 and how that is affecting our decision-making processes?
Yes, so we are yet to properly scope that item in depth, so there is still room for us to add that in if appropriate. That will probably happen at the Joint Chairs briefing, which obviously you will be at, so we can explore that further with the Director and the corporate managers.
The reason why I asked the question, or made the comment really, is it sort of talks to the point that we made earlier in relation to our finances, and we need to see some pace in relation to bringing forward part 2 and the allocations and how that's working. And it will be fair to say, anecdotally, that there is an element of tension within the planning department generally and our planning processes, which I see on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So that's the rationale behind my request.
Councillor Jameson.
Just a couple of things. One on that planning task and finish group. Now I probably missed it, but has that task and finish group been set up yet for that planning enforcement? Is it me? That's one thing.
Off the top of my own head, I'm not sure. That is under the control of the Director of Planning.
Right.
I don't think it has been set up yet, but it is in the very near future. Last time I checked, it should be about January, February, before this item obviously comes to Scrutiny Committee.
And the other thing, back in July or August, when we were setting out the work plan, there was another number of other items that we discussed we wanted to bring forward. And I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly what we agreed in the end, but I just wondered where we are with with all of those topics.
Yeah, of course, not a problem. So obviously the planning item in March is one of 4 items that we proposed for our work plans. We also proposed a item on council services and how they're being accessed by our residents, both online and in-person services. That is being scheduled to come to February. There's an information bulletin at the moment. And I am still in talks with the appropriate directors about the item on housing, social housing. Obviously, we did our social housing tour the other week. So they're now building upon information from that tour to bring forward, and the town regeneration item as well. I'm hoping, looking at the work plans, we've obviously got some space in April and May at the moment. So those are being held for those 2 items. So hopefully that will get put in motion soon.
We did reiterate several times at the time that it wasn't just planning enforcement. We wanted to look at planning as a whole.
Yeah, of course. I think planning enforcement was just the name I gave it, basically to cover what was the majority in that scoping document. But as I said to Councillor Wyman, there's only been sort of brief discussions right now about what that item is actually going to entail. That can be further scoped over chairs briefings. So an item comes to 2 chairs briefings before it comes to committee. So if there are specifics that you want explored within that report, feel free to communicate them to me or to Councillor McLaren or Wyman, who can do that for you in the chairs briefing, so we can get that included. But the directors have seen the scoping documents that we put together, so they understand what was written, what was asked for in those documents, and they're hopefully going to base their reports around the information specifically requested by yourselves.
Have committee members any more comments on the plan? Thank you. The overview and scrutiny action tracker is for noting only. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I understand there were some queries in relation to staffing. I'm not sure if I can help with those while you're still here.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
I understand there were some queries in relation to staffing. I'm not sure if I can help with those while you're still here in committee.
Arthur, I think if at some point we come back to you, we've had a bit of discussion.
That's fine.
I'd rather review that, and then we've got something more organised, and we'll come back to you with what we've decided to do, and more than happy then to meet with you.
Yeah, that's no problem, Chairman. I just wanted to remind councillors that on an annual basis I bring forward a report in relation to all things staffing, so that it doesn't come up at various different committees at different times. Happy to take in any suggestions as to what could appear on that report, and equally happy to circulate the previous version of it if that's of assistance.
Brandon's got a comment to make.
I just wonder whether it's worth mentioning then at this point some of the things that we were considering bringing into a future meeting for scoping, whether they would be things that we're allowed to scope then, that maybe we can mention this to Arthur now that he's in the room. That
I'm not sure it's appropriate just now.
I think we've had, the discussions that we've had today, I think are fine. I appreciate we've just got Arthur back and now I'm saying let's not cover it, but I've taken all the points on board that were discussed on this item, and I will discuss them with the Chief Executive after this and with the Monitoring Officer as well, as to how best to have this item sort of presented and scoped. We'll take that outside the meeting and feedback to you guys as a committee. If that's okay. Thank you.
Yes, I think noting the concern of members, I think we want to make sure that we do it properly, and then everybody's questions and concerns are raised and are answered. And probably today I don't think is the appropriate time. So thank you very much. So that concludes the business of this meeting at 10:43.